person is not on board or they're not drinking the same Kool-Aid that you're drinking, that can actually cause a chasm in a relationship and a rift.
One thing that I've really learned is how important to have that support system when you're trying to change. What's up, everyone? My name is Matthew Coles. We're here in the car, just traveling home from St. George, doing a film shoot, and we're actually just trying to do this on a whim, but also making it fun. I'm actually here with Bobby Macey, and usually you see him doing all the interviews, right? And he has a lot to say, good stuff, awesome guy. But I figured I'd take the opportunity to introduce him and ask him some questions, if that's okay with you.
Oh, that's okay with me.
All right, sounds good. So what does living an intentional life mean to you? Like, how do you incorporate it into your daily life or daily routine?
The most concise way I can say this is dance parties in the car, baby. Let's go. Keep your shoulders into it. Hand on the steering wheel, head fixed, straight ahead. Let's go. Okay, on a more serious note, can you repeat the question?
Yes, that sounds good. So what does it mean to live an intentional life to you? And how do you incorporate it into your daily life?
All right, an intentional life for me is exactly that, being intentional about your decisions. I'm not the guy who wants to wake up one day and realize that life just passed me by. I want to seize the moment. I want carpe diem. So for me, I recognized, I'd say fairly early on in my adult life, that, hey, if I want something, I got to create a plan and take massive action on how to get there. Sometimes you luck into things. Sometimes you luck into friends. You luck into a good job. You put yourself on a plan of action and you're like, hey, I'm going to school. And just because you're there in an environment, whether it's your school years, whether it's you working a job, in your teenage years or during college, like sometimes you just luck into meeting great people, figuring out what you like in life, what your interests are. And other times you have to be more deliberate about it. And so for me, I'm the guy that has a bajillion interests. And I recognize every day I can't do everything that I want to do. So I got to make a list. I've got to be deliberate and intentional about what I want to accomplish and how I'm going to be spending my time. And so every day looks a little different, but how do I incorporate that in my daily life? I make those lists. Almost every day before I go to bed, I am most of the time it's a physical list, either on my phone or on a piece of paper, but I'll make a list of what I want to accomplish the next day, from personal things like prayer and spiritual gospel study, to exercise, to work-related tasks. And then I prioritize them in order of importance, and I say, look, these are the non-negotiables. I've got to get this done no matter what, right. And life's going to happen, and here's how I can be deliberate about what I want to do in my day. Kind of a long answer, but that's one thing that really helps me.
For sure. And I'm also just wondering to have that intention. I'm thinking about that and how hard that can be for some people, right? Is there a way that really helped you to get to that habit, or is it always hard to have that intention to do those things?
Yes. So you're getting good at passing off the mic. It's been a developmental process for me. So there have been times in my life where I've been extremely whimsical and just kind of let the wind blow you where it takes you. And then you can create intention. One of the ways that I think you create intention is by putting yourself in an environment where you can be still, where you can think. One of my environments to do this is when I'm driving the car, I will turn off the radio, the music, the audiobook, the podcast, whatever it is. I'll turn it off, and it's me, the open road, and silence. And that's a time for me to think. I get a lot of ideas during that time. I have a lot of things that pop into my mind. And then I use Siri to remind me of things.
Yeah.
So if I can take action on it right then I do. Like if it's like, oh, I should call so-and-so, I haven't talked to them in a while, I'll call them right in that moment. Other times it's like, no, this isn't the moment to take action on this. I'm driving. So I'll use voice commands, set myself a reminder, and go forward. But being intentional is a developmental process. And there are a couple of resources that I think are helpful. One is journaling. If you are journaling every day, you're naturally taking time to think about your life,
Right.
to think about what you're grateful for, to recap every day what's happened in your day, what's worth documenting, what's worth not. Me going to McDonald's, that's probably not worth documenting. But if I go to McDonald's and I run into an old friend, that is worth documenting. For me, journaling really helps me to think about, what do I want out of life? Because I'm taking time to review every single day. I think that's the easiest way, low cost option for you to seek intentionality and to develop intentionality in your life is to journal. Then there are other ways, like I'm a big fan of you are what you consume. There's intake and there's output, right?
Right.
And if you're consuming content that's just trash, then that's not going to do a lot for you, your mindset, your spirit, your emotions, etc.
Yeah.
But if you're consuming content that is great and fills your cup and can change your mindset and your perspective and offer new forms of growth, then all of a sudden you're going to find yourself being more intentional about what you consume. There are some books and some podcasts and audiobooks that I've consumed intentionally, which then help me, ironically, to become more intentional about what I consume.
Right.
And I really like that, because then what goes in comes out.
You can't really hide that either.
No.
Whether it be small or big, something comes out, whatever it is that you consume. I like that answer.
And I like that you like the answer.
Yeah, of course. So with that process and with that development, then obviously, it's not all just success. Obviously we live life. There's a lot of failures, a lot of growth in that. I guess in a way, how has experiencing those failures in your life really helped you to become stronger or learn more than what you thought you could?
Dude, that's a great question. Kudos to you, Matthew Coles. Failure is a great motivator for me. It can also be a great devastator. So if you've worked super hard for something and you fail, like there's that Chumbawamba song, I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down.
Sometimes you're just like, okay, intrinsically I have that motivation. Other times you take a blow that feels like it's the end and you don't know how you're gonna pick yourself up. This is where having a good inner circle really matters. I'm a relationships guy. I think relationships are so important. I want people to feel good around me. And simultaneously, I want to feel good around those who I'm spending time with. I want them to fill my cup selfishly. I don't go into relationships with this idea of greed. I go into a relationship with this idea of symbiotic goodness and kindness and give and take. And so for me, I have a lot of people in my inner circle, the first being my wife, who they are there to pick me up when I am down.
Right.
And some people ask, Bobby, does that happen to you? Do you get down? You're a pretty positive guy. Yes, I get down. I get ticked off. I have these frustrating moments and I have ways of dealing with those. For me, it really is about life is the marathon. It's not a sprint. There are moments which are sprints, but overall it is a marathon and I'm in it for the long run. I really like the book Growth Mindset. I think it's Angela Duckworth is the author, or maybe it's Carol Dweck, one of the two. One of them wrote a book called Grit, one of them wrote a book called Mindset, and I like both of them. But the failure is a step on the journey. It's not your identity.
Okay.
I think that's the best way for me to put it.
Yeah.
In tweet length version, because if you don't have that mindset, then it's crippling to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then why do I even get out of bed every day? But I get out of bed every day and I make my bed every day. well, why are you going to make your bed? You're just going to get back in it. Because I'm creating an environment for success. I make my bed every day. I promise this has a point. I make my bed every day because that is a win to start the day. Then you know what happens when I come back in the room? It's a clean environment. It's a welcoming environment. It's not something that clutters my mind or my day or takes up mental real estate. I walk into my room and I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And then I look forward to getting back into my bed because my bed doesn't look messy and gross, and
There's a certain flow to it.
there is a flow to it. And we have all had that experience. Imagine if you walked into a business, let's say that you were going to walk into a doctor's office to get a treatment done. And that doctor, he treated his office like, well, why am I going to clean things up? I'm just going to use them again. So nothing was organized. Everything was a cluttered mess. You walk in there and you leave like, you haven't even left it, but you walk in there and you're like, this is just not a good feeling. I don't know that I want this doctor examining me or operating on me or whatever, right? Cleanliness is a wonderful thing. Being organized is a wonderful thing. And so a lot of people don't realize the effect that that has on their lives until you've experienced it. For me, I think about all these things in my environment, from cleanliness to my inner circle. And I'm like, these are things which are going to help me get up from failure and do it all again and put myself out there again. And so hopefully that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But that's kind of how I think about it.
Gotcha. No, I really like that because everyone's unique, right? Like you have your way, I have my way, where it's like I don't journal, but
Yeah.
yeah, yet. But I always try to look for the positive in things, which also keeps me going because there's more positive than negative when you're looking for it, right? And so yeah, it's just that mental mindset. That's awesome, though.
One of many reasons I like you, Matthew Combs.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And so you also mentioned with, I can't remember what you said, but about you're a relationships guy, right? How has this self-development or you becoming a better person, how has that affected your relationships as well?
This is a really good question because I would say for the most part, it has affected my relationships in a very positive way. There are times though where it can be incredibly frustrating in your relationships. Take for example, close friendship or a spousal relationship where you are doing certain work to try and make changes in your life that you believe in. That could be mental work, that could be physical work. We see this all the time. If the other person is not on board or they're not drinking the same Kool-Aid that you're drinking, that can actually cause a chasm in a relationship and a rift. So sometimes that can be hard. And there have been times in my relationships where that has happened. Now, nothing that wasn't surpassable, nothing that wasn't repairable or that we couldn't just move beyond, but that is something that can happen. And so for me, ultimately, I have to decide in my life, what type of individual do I want to be? And if somebody else is not okay with the growth that I'm trying to experience, we need to have an open conversation about what our relationship looks like. Here's an example. Let's say you're in a relationship with your spouse and one of you wants to start hitting the gym and eating clean and really focusing on diet, nutrition, exercise. And then the other starts making comments like, well, you're just boring now because you don't eat any good food. Or, oh, you're going to get all skinny and fit. And like, I'm going to be left here just looking like blah. And it's like, that stuff can be that, like, those are, I mean, I'm being a little dramatic in the way I'm presenting it.
Yeah,
but those are real situations people face, right? And ultimately what it comes down to is this. I'm an individual and I need to do what is right for me.
Right.
And sometimes the other person's going to get on board and other times they're not. It's going to take a little while. So here's an example from my personal life. I started doing cold plunges years ago. I had experienced one. I thought it was kind of stupid. And I was like, why would anybody get in cold water? I had a friend who was taking cold showers every day. And I was like, dude, go enjoy that. I'm going to take my warm shower every day. And then all of a sudden, I was in a position where I experienced this. And it was so hard for me. I was the dude who was freaking out, trying to catch my breath, hyperventilating, you name it, in this bucket of ice water in Mexico City, of all places. This is 2022.
Okay.
And I see these other people who were doing this, and they were cool as a cucumber. Got in the water, took a deep breath, controlled their environment. Like, even though they were in a crazy environment, freezing cold, 40-degree water, they're breathing normal, they're smiling. And I feel like I'm losing my mind. And so then all of a sudden, about a minute into this, the guide who was doing this with us comes over and like helps breathe with me. And he's like, match my breath, match my breath. It calmed me down. And then I was in there for about 3 minutes. By a minute and a half, I was smiling and I was under full control. So it was such a crazy experience for me because I'm sitting there like, I was completely out of control a minute ago, and now I'm in control, yet I'm in the same exact environment.
Right.
Freezing cold water.
Yeah.
So I have this experience, and it like shakes me. And all of a sudden, I start drinking the cold plunge Kool-Aid. Well, my wife, she's like, I don't want that cold water. So for, I don't know, 2 more years, a year and a half, she was like, oh my goodness, Bobby, you are so ridiculous. And it never caused a rift in our marriage. It was just one of those things where it was like, she wasn't bought in, I was.
Right.
And slowly but surely, little other touch points would enter her life. Like that series on Disney Plus called Limitless with Chris Hemsworth. It has an episode all about the benefits of cold exposure. So then all of a sudden, we watch that and she's kind of like, oh, well, okay, still don't want to do it, but whatever. Then comes this moment where one day I was doing a cold plunge outside. It was maybe like 55-degree water, 60-degree water. For me, it wasn't that cold because I'm like the 40 range.
Right.
She hopped in and that was really hard for her, but it was a good intro for her. And then all of a sudden, she kind of liked the way she felt when she got out. Like, the endorphins were going, there was a sense of mental clarity. And so all these things that I had already experienced however many times, she was starting to experience. And it was this process that she was going through. Fast forward, end of 2023, she's going through a really hard time. One of the greatest things that we were able to do when she was like about to have a panic attack was to get her in freezing cold water. Sometimes we would just fill up the bathtub as cold as it could get. So it was in the winter. And so it'd probably get to about 50, 55 degrees. Other times, there was one time she got in 35-degree water with me in an ice barrel outside. And like, she would do this. And it was a reminder to her that no matter what was going on in her life, she was able to get through it through breathing, through my environment sucks right now, but I can still find a way to be in control. So it took years for her to come along on this, what I'll call cold plunge, cold exposure journey, right?
Right.
And now I wouldn't say that she's into it as much as I am, but she definitely doesn't look at me with kind of that side eye anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's a developmental process. It's a journey. Sometimes it's really hard in relationships. I think sometimes in relationships, it's hard if like one of you is on a spiritual journey and the other's not, because those are some like serious things in a marriage, right? You want to be unified with your spouse and your beliefs. It's one thing to do a cold plunge and the other doesn't. It's one thing to eat clean and the other doesn't. But there are some serious things that are hard. And I think the biggest thing that you can do is try and open a line of communication that says, hey, I respect if you don't want to do this with me, but I still need to do this. And this is important to me. And So sometimes I'm talking mostly from a spousal side. Sometimes from a friendship side, you're going to have to recognize that, hey, if certain people aren't wanting to come on this growth journey with me, then it doesn't mean we can't be friends. It just means that we're probably going to be spending less time with each other because what they're doing, I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Here's one more example from teenage years. I was 15, one of my best friends, he started getting into the party scene and that wasn't my scene. So naturally, we drifted apart. Why? Because he was partying and I wasn't. That was my personal growth, was abstaining from alcohol and tobacco products and from that type of scene. And part of his journey was experimenting with all of that.
Right.
But it no longer made sense for us to be hanging out on Friday nights and Saturday nights together because we were just two very different people who wanted different things out of life.
Sure.
If I saw that dude today, I would give him the biggest hug. I love that dude. I didn't stop being friends with him. We just didn't hang out as much.
Right. No, and I really like that answer because one thing that I've really learned is how important to have that support system when you're trying to change. Because usually I worked for a friend who actually did this, like did developmental work with couples or with individuals. And he would always, whenever time he would like pitch or sell or give his services to this person who wants to change and feels good about it, he always makes sure that the significant other or spouse is there because he wants to make sure that the couple always understands what's going to happen to this individual, right? He wanted also to make sure that there is a support system there because even though the spouse might not want to do it, he always asks the question, will you support her in this or him?
That's
right?
huge.
It's huge because usually when you're doing hard, like when you're changing, it's hard. And so the negative will always trump change because you want to keep the status quo, right? And so when you have a spouse or significant other that's, preventing you from changing, that will always win because you always do see like the negative more when you have that energy in the relationship than the positive, if that makes sense. And so, no, I'm all for of like making sure like, and if the spouse doesn't support that, then I don't know what the best answer would be, but to try and find someone who will support you, right? Yeah. Even if they're not with you, just ask the question, will you support me? I think goes a long ways. So, that's awesome. Bobby, you've talked a lot and said a lot of good things, but I just want to ask you one more question. In this developmental journey, right? It's obviously you haven't crossed the finish line. You probably have years worth of not crossing the finish line. And so what is it that you're working on currently that that you can improve on or that will make you a better person or like, just what goals are you accomplishing right now?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question. There's a couple things. One, I continue to journal daily and I continue to review my journals. So I talk about journaling a lot. The app I use is Day One. The reason I use this app is A, it's digital, syncs across all my devices. B, it has a feature called On This Day where I can review that same date. So today, November 15th, I can review what happened on November 15th last year, 2 years ago, as long as I have an entry on that day. For me, that's impactful because I've been journaling for years. So I'm able to look back in the past and that helps guide my future. I'm a huge believer in that. So that's one thing I continue to do. The other thing that I constantly have to be doing is saying, once again, what am I consuming? And in this case, that could be food, that could be content, that could be a lot of things. So what am I trying to consume currently? I just finished a book called Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Really liked it. Heads up for you out there. It does have some profanity in there. I really like his perspective on life. And there were a lot of things in that book that just made me stop and think for a few minutes, where I'd pause it and I'd be like, wow, like that was deep. That was gold. How can that apply to my life? There's a book that I like to revisit every few years called Atomic Habits by James Clear. fantastic book. And that to me helps kind of reset me when I feel like I need a little bit more organization in my life and just some clarity. And then a couple other things that I'm working on right now. From a personal standpoint, I'm actually trying to focus more on my nutrition. I am like Buddy the Elf, and sugar is just something to me that, so good. Cue gif of Homer Simpson drooling. Oh,
I'm sure a lot of people
Right?
have that problem. So.
so yeah, as I lick my lips, I realize I'm getting sugar in so many different ways. And some of my work is sedentary at a desk for periods of time. And other times you and I are shaking and moving and we're out on video shoots and stuff like that. I'm trying to make sure that I get a decent nutrition in my day, or I should say not a decent nutrition. I'm trying to be more cognizant specifically about what's going into my body. I'm not changing my whole diet. I still eat candy. I still eat some of these things. I'm starting with the process of just a little bit of a detox of I don't eat as much. And so for me, it's just this principle of moderation. I'm trying to, one of the things I am coming really close to doing is just ditching soda. I've pretty much ditched caffeine. I just realized that caffeine's not doing anything for me. And I'm the guy that never wants to be in a situation where I feel like I need a substance besides water or general nutrition to get me through something.
Right.
And I recognize that a lot of people feel like they need their fix of caffeine in order to function in the day. I don't want to be that guy, and I want to be the guy who you could drop me in a desert, and if I had enough food and water, I wouldn't have withdrawals of anything, right?
Yeah.
Except for maybe some loneliness, because I do like people. One of the other things that I'm really focused on right now is just kind of financial growth. Is saying, what changes do I need to make in my life right now to better my future? I'm 36 and I have big goals and big ambitions in my life. And as a guy who is a big dreamer, you need a plan of attack. And I believe that small and simple things do have a great impact over time. And I believe in the principle of, we call it the compounding effect, whether that's compound interest or just things compound. The good compounds in your life when you continue to make good choices. The bad compounds when you continue to make bad choices. So that soda, that sugar, that's not going to give me a big gut today, but 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, I could find myself in an unsatisfactory position physically if I don't change what I'm doing, right? So these are some things that I'm just looking at. And one other thing that really makes an impact for me is getting some sort of spiritual nourishment in my day, whether that's in the Bible, whether that is other scripture sources. Even sometimes I just like listening. You and I were just doing this. I like listening to Lauren Daigle in the car. So instead of jamming to a ton of other stuff, sometimes I'll just put on Lauren Daigle because spiritually that it makes me feel good. It tastes good. It's delicious to me, right? It's all about that intake, baby. Those are some things I'm trying to do right now.
That's so cool. Bobby, you're amazing. Amazing individual. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Just need more good and always developing. Like, it just excites me when people are doing that because we become better people, we become better community, better partners, better friendships, like just better all around. And everyone likes to be better. So
I'm with you, baby. The betterment good. Be somebody.
yes, of course. Well, thank you. Appreciate taking this time to answer a few questions. And I know we definitely got a little deep there, but it was good. It was really good.
Go home, baby.
For sure. So for those of you out there, thank you so much for listening and for seeing our progress, our growth as we work together. And it's been a lot of fun and we're just going up and at 'em, and good things are coming for, Be Somebody podcast and the things that we're doing and changing people's lives with video and good content. And so we're just grateful that you're all here on this journey. So anyways, we'll talk to you all later.